Welcome to Rebuild Mark, the recap. This is my friend Dan Cavallari.
It's me.
Dan.
Hi.
This is very different than the recap last year because
yes, you have this piece of hardware.
I are a finisher.
Yeah. Big moment.
Big moment.
Well, lots of 200 big moments.
Lots of small moments that added up to be a big moment.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. So I didn't get to go, and so I didn't get to see the pomp and circumstance of Unbound and your performance in particular. So let's start with the interesting part, which is the ride itself. Walk us through your day. 200 miles.
200 miles. So up early, as usual, fixing all the stuff. Had a little bike issue, self-inflicted bike issue the night before.
Those are the best kind.
Thankfully, you talked me through the repairs. So I had to get the Feedback Sports tools out and adjust some brakes. And as I was doing that, I should have put a wheel in the front as I was adjusting the back, because I inadvertently grabbed the front brake with no wheel in it. Squeezed real hard, wondering why nothing was happening in the back.
Yeah.
So got that sorted out, got my stuff together that morning, got down. Power meter wasn't working all of a sudden that morning, so I had to stop on the way down. Luckily, I bought 2 batteries, one for my heart rate monitor, had a spare, so stopped, replaced the battery in the power meter, got it synced up, everything was good. And then we were down for the start. Nice. The pros started real early, including the women had their own start, which is really cool. We were 30 minutes, I think, after the women. And it was usually you get seated by your expected finish time, but they did a cool thing where they shut the finish line off way out so they could separate the elite from the regular folks having their finishes. But that meant you couldn't just walk up and get in the spot you wanted to get in.
Right.
So I kind of got stuck kind of farther back than I wanted. But the gun went off. The plan Coach Kristen and I came up with, do what feels good until the first checkpoint at mile 70. Don't worry about power. Don't worry about heart rate. Turns out,
I'd be sitting there with a bag of Doritos, man.
well, it turns out if you give me just a wee bit of fitness and tell me to do what feels good,
it's too hard.
I went, it didn't feel too hard. I felt great.
Yeah.
But at about 45 minutes in, I went, okay, this just can't continue. Yeah. And then 15 minutes later, it's like, no, really now, this can't continue, because the hills were starting. So I backed off a little bit, not by much, and did that plan to the first checkpoint and felt great.
Yeah.
And at that first checkpoint, got sustenance, but was mostly pickles, because I was really bought into the Tailwind Nutrition.
Yeah. We need to pause here at the first rest station, because you mentioned sustenance, and I think it's time for you to take your medal. And before we get too deep into this, cheers. Congratulations on finishing. That is a huge, huge moment, and I'm proud of you.
I am too.
Yeah.
Thanks for the help.
Yeah, thanks for the delicious whiskey, by the way. All right, you may continue.
So, first checkpoint, mile 70 in Alma. Feeling good. And let's talk about nutrition now.
Yeah.
So I went, talked to Tailwind Nutrition, interviewed the founders, and ended up pretty much taking all of their advice. And that advice is, the only thing you need is what's in their product. That's their position. And I'd done that in training. I'd done a couple of 60-mile rides with no other food.
Yeah.
And it worked. It feels weird because it just feels very even.
Yeah.
But I was bought into that. And so at that checkpoint, I did have a little swig of Coke, because you just love a Coke on a hot day. And I had a banana. But talking to Jeff and Jenny, particularly Jenny Veerling, she said, you know, physiologically you don't need anything, but psychologically you might need to chew on something, but make sure you adjust your calories. And I had a total of 5 bottles worth. So 3 cages and the Chase Vest. It's essentially 2 more bottles.
That's from Camelbak, by the way.
And so I didn't really, it was short enough distances between each neutral water and checkpoint. I didn't need all 5. So I kept one of those with just water, drank the water for about the next 30 minutes, and then went back to the Tailwind.
Okay.
All the way through to the checkpoint in Council Grove at 148. I made a little mistake in that somebody offered me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I'm a little bit of a sucker for those. I never eat them at home, but on a hot day. So I had about 2/3 of a Crustable and a swig of Coke, and that was close to 300 calories. But it was 54 miles to the finish. I needed all the bottles.
Sure.
So I didn't leave with water. So it was a little bit of a stomach, not an issue at all, just it felt not great. I had great energy until I burned through that and got back on track. So it was was incredibly impressed with the Tailwind Nutrition from the standpoint of I've never done anything that long, but I've done 13-hour things before, and I've never had that kind of energy that was just even.
Yeah.
It was unremarkable.
Yeah.
Which I thought
is good in a
was
race
excellent.
like this. Yeah.
So I think that later we should talk about people's complaints about this product, that product doesn't work. I've always thought it's a lot of user error. The product didn't work. I had pizza at the rest stop, but the product didn't work. So
hey, pizza always works, first of all.
Well, I followed that advice. I took a leap of faith, although I had tested it in training, and it just worked beautifully.
Yeah.
I had no stomach issue, no sour stomach, no cramps, not even moments where I didn't have energy.
Yeah.
All the way up to the very end. So that was outstanding.
Yeah. I think, in terms of endurance athletes or athletic pursuits, we do kind of get dumb about nutrition sometimes. I'm as guilty as anybody. The general idea is shove as many calories in as possible because you're going to need them, but that's not always the best course of action. And we actually just talked about this when I did the 100-mile road ride. And I said, I just had this awful gut feeling. And it was with using nutrition that had always been kind to my stomach. And you said, well, what else did you eat? And I said, well, I stopped at the mountain fountain to get, and I ate a brick of sugar about that big, Yeah,
and it's funny. This is something I hadn't really thought about, but it's training the nutrition too. So you can get to where you can eat a lot more carbohydrate per hour, but it takes training. And I hadn't done that kind of training. I had a little bit to build up to what I used, which was 250 calories per hour. But I couldn't, if I tried to go too much more, I think I would have had the same issues. And that's what Jeff and Jenny really pointed out is sometimes it's just a caloric issue. And you've got to manage that more so than any particular thing you're eating or drinking. You got to manage that total caloric input to what you've trained to.
Yeah.
And I think that just made a huge difference. And again, no sour stomach. I drank it. I was drinking it. Funny, I finished and Kristen was there and I got a beer and I had the beer. And she's like, yeah, you need something besides Tailwind. I'm like, yeah, I need something besides Tailwind. And then I finished the beer and I went, took the little hose out from the chase vest and had a little more. I was like, well, it still tastes good. So, and again, I think the product was fabulous. I would encourage you to take that approach with any product you use.
Yeah. Find what works for you, but, stick to that.
And thanks to Tailwind because they did support us with product for that. And a great batch of advice. If you want to hear that advice, there's an interview I did with Jeff and Jenny Veerling, the founders of Tailwind. It's kind of comical when Jeff's talking about mixing up powders in the kitchen and pixie dust everywhere.
Yeah, right everywhere.
But that worked great. And that was the course, it was, by the time I got through that second checkpoint, I felt really good. It was hot. It was very hot. Hotter than I thought it would be given how overcast it was.
Yeah.
But around mile 170 or so, 175, you're kind of done with the hard stuff. And that's when you start to believe it was going to work. And it did. It was dark and lights worked.
Yeah.
No issues with that. It was kind of fun riding in the dark.
So last year, the big narrative was, of course, the big mud walk.
Yep.
Not an issue this year, I assume.
Not for the 100 and 200. The 50 had a different course, and there was a small mud walk in that. We went through a few spots because it had rained, and not a lot, but it had rained a couple of days before. But the northern course from Emporia, much rockier, it drains better. So it just wasn't an issue. The few muddy spots there were easy to ride around.
Okay. Was there anything on the course that stood out for you as a particularly challenging moment or a time when you said, boy, I don't know?
No, and that's what's brilliant. Yeah. I did not get off the bike. I rode every hill.
Yeah.
Little Egypt is everybody. You should just go to Emporia and drive out to Little Egypt Road to see this and then think, maybe I'll ride a bike over that. It's crazy. And Divide Road, the first real separator is Divide Road. I forget, it's not very far in. It's just, it looks like a minefield. It's just big, chunky stuff, ruts. Yeah. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
There were a lot of hills that people walked, and I've got nothing against walking. I just feel like if I could ride it, I want to. And I was able to ride it very slowly, but stay within myself. And I guess the element I'd say isn't an element. When you get into that first checkpoint at mile 70, mile 7 before you get there, maybe it's 140, the second checkpoint, the hills are so relentless. Mm-hmm. you top one and it's, it's a half a mile long. It's 6 or 8 or 10%. You get a top, whoo, that's good. I'm done. And you look up and it's not that it's way down there. It's like down and up. You can't actually see them coming.
Right.
You just keep finishing going, oh my, come on, one more. It was just relentless.
Yeah.
It was just up and down. It was crazy. So when you finally got to that second, and actually the second checkpoint, you lead into this beautiful park and you're on this concrete path. It's smooth and it's canopied. It's cool. You think, well, this would be nice to have all day long.
Yeah.
So it was a nice reward. The last couple of miles were very cool and quiet and peaceful. But boy, those hills leading up to it are just relentless. And I had over 10,000 feet of climbing.
Yeah, it's a big day. And that's the real essence, I think, of that course is they're not only are they leg killers, they're just mental killers. And I think that is the essence of the challenge of this race. And I think if we think back to last year when we were having this sort of, recap of what happened during the race, it was so unfortunate that mud pit became the story because that is not what this race is about.
No.
And I think this course this year really brought that to the fore. And I think it sounds like it was a much better experience.
It was. And there was certainly, at the rider meeting, the new race director informed us that in about 5 minutes we get an email with a new course, that there was a section of road that just wasn't safe. They couldn't get EMS down it if they needed it, and they rerouted us. And it was very much the same setup as last year where, we're going to be here, take a left turn, a right turn. That's a terrible place. We could just go straight, a left turn. It was just a change just like that.
Yeah.
But I appreciated the fact that, it was premeditated. We knew there was a problem there. They took action. They fixed it. That's what you should do. I think this thing where, days in advance it's going to be impossible and you leave it there, that was the problem last year.
Yeah. 16 hours?
16 hours and 21 minutes.
That's a long day on the bike.
Yep.
What was this the first time that you'd ridden that far, that long?
I've never ridden 200 miles before. Never been on the bike 16. And actually it's 15 hours and 19 minutes of riding.
Right. And then
an hour of being at
putzing around. Yeah. What was that experience like? Hitting, for me anyway, the longest I think I've been on a bike at one time. I've done 24-hour races, but it's always been breaks. The longest I've ever done is, I think, 8 hours. Mm-hmm. What is it like to hit that, whatever your max was before, and then go beyond that and say, all right, this is all a whole new world here?
It was kind of cool because it was, that was in between the second water oasis and the second checkpoint. I was by myself. And I just happened to look down and see 130 something and go, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Because 134 or 5, I think, is the longest I've ever been.
Sure.
And like you said, that ride we did was a ride we did back home where the idea was to get a big group of people around the exterior of a county all together. So it wasn't like I was riding hard in those. But it was pretty fun to be out there and have those little milestones where, okay, uncharted territory. Yeah. And the first one, frankly, I was pretty excited. I tried the Instagram reel of it, it didn't come out because I was, having a good time.
Yeah.
But just getting to the first checkpoint on time, feeling good, ready to go, that was a big milestone. Because last year when I got to the first checkpoint, it was shut down.
Yeah.
Everybody was gone,
Right.
So
pretty defeating.
Yeah. So none of that this year.
One of the other things that can and often does go wrong in a race this long is gear. Talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of what you brought with you that day. What exceeded your expectations? What did you end up not using that you thought you might? Tell me the story of your gear setup.
Well, let's quick recap the gear. Obviously, we got the bike, the Specialized S-Works Diverge STR. Gotta be just the most brilliant bike for that course. The SRAM Red up front, the mullet set up with the eagle in the back. Leading up to it, I was getting a little tired of the big gaps. Yeah. But boy, that 38.50, I put a 38 on in lieu of the 40 up front. Worth having for sure. Yeah. The clothing was something different. I had a bunch of specialized clothing. Towards the end, I lost a few pounds, and we'll talk about that in a second. Everything worked really well. I had a shifting issue. Oddly enough, had not had any real shifting issues. And I even did the old derailleur hanger alignment a week and a half ago, and it was just perfect. For some reason on that day, gears in the middle didn't want to shift right. Not the end of the world. It shifted great at the little grainy gears where I needed it.
Yeah, right.
So not a big deal. The tire choice was, I think, smart. I like the Tracer Pros, the Pathfinder Pros that came on it, or I've been riding before, but those Tracer Pros have a more rounded profile and tread all the way across versus that little slick area.
Right.
Definitely a good choice to have tread all the way across, because that 95% of that ride's in dirt and rocks.
Yeah.
The tires were fabulous. I did not tiptoe down any of those descents because that was where I could make time and get a little bit of a break and not have fatigue.
Yeah. Team inertia. Yeah.
Team inertia. Yeah. My downhill muscle.
Yeah, that's right.
But I tell you, there were flats, lots of flats you see.
Yeah.
Lots of mechanicals. I had nothing. And I looked at the tires. There's not a single cut in them. And me at my size bombing down those descents was amazing. And we'll pull the pieces and parts out. But look, everything worked really well. I could not imagine me on a bike for more than 4 or 5 hours and not have lower back tightness, bad shoulder issues. But having that bit of suspension and give on both ends of the bike, just a game changer.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I was riding it today over some pretty intense washboard, and it is incredible how much it soaks up. I was riding next to somebody who was on a crux actually, and he was, holding on, and I was just cruising along.
It just takes that oomph out of it.
Yeah.
It just makes a big difference. And I had no lower, in fact, when I stepped off, my legs felt great. I mean, subsequently, I have realized that my soft tissue in the undercarriage area is a little bit tender. I rode yesterday. Bad idea. Should not have ridden yesterday. But everything was great. Even the last minute fit stuff that we did down at Wheat Ridge, we made a few changes, nothing major. One was the cleat placement change. I did undo that because I just think, I've got decades of that same, that felt weird, but I kept the saddle changes and the handlebar changes, and everything was just brilliant.
Good.
I felt great on the bike the whole day.
Excellent.
Around mile 170, my triceps had just given out.
Yeah.
And so, but at that point, the roads were pretty smooth. I would just sit up anytime it was flat or downhill. I'd sit up for a bit and rest, and it was all good.
Excellent.
Let's get through the specifics of the gear, you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
So obviously the bike was awesome. Specialized sent the bike. Thank you very much. I would not have bought an STR before.
Diverge STR.
I would have just thought, that's a lot. But after riding it, it is amazing how much fun it is as a bike on its own without this stuff, because you can turn it off.
Yeah.
Without it on, it's just a fun bike to ride. With it on, it is shocking how much difference it is and how much of the vibration and bumps get to you. Now, it's not a big hit mountain bike kind of thing,
right?
But that's not what we're doing.
Right.
We're high frequency kind of changes. In training, I'd gotten to where I pretty much rode the rear future shock in the middle, and I didn't often turn the wide open. It didn't take but about, after that first water stop at mile 40, we were in chunky enough stuff that I flipped it wide open, and it stayed there until about mile 170, because it just made a big difference.
Yeah, it'll save you.
Yeah. And the front future shock, that should just be on every bike, and it stayed on the whole day.
Yeah.
The only time the front future shock to me is something that gets in the way is if you're in the drops and sprinting flat out. Even climbing out of the saddle on the hoods, it's fine. I don't even notice it. So,
and it's worth noting now that the future shock does come with a lockout too, and you can adjust the sensitivity of the movement as well. And that was not the case when this first hit the market. So now it is a much different piece of equipment, and it's much better. Yeah. So,
and on those rocket descents that were just full of landmine stones that were this big. I mean, I'm off the saddle most time. The back's not in play, but I am in the drops in the front's going, and it's just it was just amazing how much easier it felt than what I knew it could be on a completely rigid setup.
Right.
The helmet, which is also specialized. This is the Propero 4, which I think is a new helmet.
Tis.
I questioned for a couple of reasons using the helmet. One is it's black. It's going to be hot, close to the head.
Yep.
The other is I just don't care for MIPS.
Yeah.
Most implementations of MIPS.
Okay.
And this one in training, over the washboards, the whole thing rattles.
Interesting.
The MIPS thing moves around. But I decided to use it because, a little bit of aero, and the one place I actually believe me having aero could help is way up high where there's no other interference. And it it was not been hot at all in training. We hadn't had a 90-degree day in training.
Right.
And when we got there, it was very hot for a lot of the day. Incredible ventilation.
Yeah.
I'm really glad I chose it. I didn't even notice the helmet per se. Like nothing, there were no contact points. It had great ventilation. If you stick a water bottle in that hole and squeeze it, the water goes everywhere. The one problem I have with it is these pads hold a remarkable amount of sweat until they don't. And then it just comes rushing out. And the combination of that and the glasses I was wearing, I couldn't see most of the day.
Really?
And you don't want to take your glasses off because there's rocks flying everywhere the whole time. But eventually I had to. I just couldn't. When it got dark, I just couldn't. I couldn't see much in the daylight with the sweat all over.
Yeah.
So I ended up riding the last probably 40 miles without glasses on. I just couldn't see anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that's the helmet or the glasses, the combination, because the helmets are Limar and this is a Specialized, and maybe they just don't made up.
Right.
But it's just not hot enough here to have that in testing. So that was my only issue with the helmet. It wasn't even hot up there. You'd think it'd be hot. It wasn't really hot anywhere. But when it did release the sweat, it released it all at one time.
All at one time.
In a flood.
That's not exclusive to that helmet. I mean, that is a thing that happens with a lot of these helmets, especially now that the ventilation has changed. I mean, a lot of times before, I mean, you were having these big open vents where some of that moisture could escape upward even when you're going slow.
It's impressive how much air flows through that because you see so much closed surface. It was so I'd ride it again. You know, it'd be maybe I'd get a different color, but it just didn't seem that hot. So
good,
great helmet,
excellent.
Yeah. Clothing. Well, let's see if this is on top. So the Wahoo, you gave me the Wahoo. I don't know where this came from.
That came from Wahoo.
Came from Wahoo. I had 35% battery left.
At the end?
At 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
After all day long with it on. And that's with, I did turn the radar off. I didn't use the radar because it would just beeped all day long.
Did you have navigation going?
Had navigation, had the route loaded, navigation. I had the power meter, all the shifters hooked up so I can see my gears. 35% battery left.
Bravo, Wahoo.
Outstanding. The navigation was off. I think that was the map's fault, though.
Okay.
So most of the day, I couldn't really trust the turn signals. I had to look at the map.
Sure.
It's the first time, people have complained that with the SRAM setup, you don't have a button that you can assign and flip through screens. It's the first time I thought, that's why I need that, because I would have to double check.
Yeah.
And I did make 2 wrong turns. Luckily, it did beep at me and tell me. It knew where I was.
Yeah.
It's just when it would tell me to turn, it just wasn't correct for like the center of the route.
Sure.
But other than that, I just would flip through. When I'd hear it beep, I'd flip through the map, confirm the turn, everything was good. I did spend a lot of the day on my own. Yeah. I didn't find a lot of benefit. The groups were faster than me on the hills, slower than me on the flats. And the downhills, it just didn't work out. Plus, if it's not a block headwind, how much benefit of a draft is there when there's only one very thin path through the rocks?
Right.
But it did a great job. Incredible battery life. And I'd bought a cable. I had a little power bank in there. Didn't need it.
Excellent. Wow.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, nicely done.
Yep. Clothing. Specialized sent the SWAT, Primes, SWAT, all this amazing gear. I'm going to tell you something. I'm a sucker for really nice cycling clothing. And this is some of the most luxurious stuff. The fabrics are amazing.
Is this clean? You washed
this? This is why. I didn't actually use it during.
I'm not going to grab your chamois, but
I didn't actually use it during the ride.
All right.
But here's the issue. The issue is that this is high-end race gear. It is, as often is the case, engineered and designed for high-end racers.
Yes.
I am not a high-end racer. This stuff is essentially designed, this is extra large, which is what I needed to fit in. It's designed for somebody probably 3 or 4 inches taller than me and 25 pounds lighter. When I lost a few pounds towards the end, all of a sudden the chamois wasn't working. The jersey, the sleeves were down to almost my elbows. It just didn't fit. They also sent me larges, which I did try, but they were just too tight around the downhill muscle.
How much did you lose over the course of the race?
I didn't lose, well, not the race, leading up to it. I really didn't lose a lot of weight once we started training hard in March until the last couple of weeks. And then I dropped 5 or 6 more pounds. And oddly enough, that difference was enough that this just didn't fit right.
Sure.
But it wasn't enough to make the large fit right.
Gotcha.
So the chamois placement's great, but I couldn't handle the pressure because, modern bibs, I don't know why we do that, but they come up very high in the front. It's a girdle, which is lovely for the photo shoot.
You're right, yes.
But
keeps these tucked in.
I couldn't do that. So what I ended up doing, which, I only had the one pair of those to train in. So often I was still using the Endura gear from last year.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I pulled that out. I have two of the bibs, and one of them, the chamois feels better than the other. So I have it marked. With a little number 1 right there. So I went to those. Same with the jersey. And this is the GT 500 Reaver.
I'm just going to hold up your jersey for you.
It's all clean.
All right.
And this stuff, it's a little too big as well now, which is nice.
Yeah,
I don't have larges to try, but everything still fit in the right place. Super comfortable. Just no issues with it. Well, I say no issues. The one issue is that there's a double fabric here, and then a fabric of the jersey. So essentially, for this section here, it's tripled.
Yeah,
I got hot, and so unfortunately, there's some race photography of my big white belly with my jersey wide open. It was hot, but other than that, super champ.
Hang that one on the wall
last year. Yeah. Let's see what else. The little bag. I bought a Silica. I didn't bring it with me. There's a video where I put that on. A Silica Handlebar bag, and that's where I put the power bank, the cables for that, and the phone. The phone made it all the way through, oddly enough, too. Nice. I wasn't doing anything with it. Tire boots, extra CO2, some tools, all that stuff. Never unzipped it.
Okay.
Never went into the SWAT container. That's where the rest of my...
Well, that's what you don't want to have to go in there.
Don't want to have to go in there, but I didn't have to go in that. So, but I spent a lot of time in this.
Yeah.
Up here, this... Revelate mag tank bag. I would have my next round of Tailwind to be mixed up. I had the 6mm Allen wrench in case I had to get the wheel off quick.
Right.
The Dynaplug and a CO2 with the inflator.
Okay.
So I get off quick. I never used any of that, but it was where I kept the Tylenol and the nutrition.
Great. Where did you keep your bottle of whiskey?
I had no whiskey. I left the whiskey in the AdventureWagon.
Yeah. Okay.
But that turned out to be fabulous. That connector, and it's a fine quality product, don't get me wrong, but the trick of this is this little magnetic closure. Yeah. It just makes it so easy to flip it open and get things out and put it back on.
This is nice. I don't have to talk. I'm just going to enjoy the whiskey.
Yeah. Let's see. What else? What other equipment did we use? Shoes. I have the Specialized Recon S-Work shoes. They were very good. We did make a change in those when we did the fit. We added the blue inserts, footbeds, which I had ridden for years. All that worked really good. I did have a hot spot on my big toe of my right foot for about 3 hours. It was a little uncomfortable. I don't think it was related to anything other than I've been on a bike at 10 hours at that point.
This is notable. So mark of the future when you're editing this video. Right here, I want you to put a picture of your foot from last year after the race.
Yeah.
You had some horrible foot issues last year, so this is big news that this worked out for you.
I had a significant lack of skin on the back of my feet.
see the photo right here.
Yeah, look away if you don't. Yeah. The shoes were great, and it was nice that I didn't have to walk any. But I think it would have been much better walking at that point.
Yeah, with those shoes.
Yeah.
Great. What about gloves? Did you wear gloves?
Did not wear gloves. I brought some gloves. I had them in the saddlebag years and years ago when I closed the bike shop I owned. I had a pair of Giro gloves with no padding in them. I don't like padding.
Yeah. I
dug those out of a box along with some physique bar gel, which I don't think they make anymore.
I don't know.
From 18 years ago that's under there. I was able to put my hands right on them.
It was squishy.
It is squishy.
That's lovely.
And I had those gloves, and I thought about putting them on because it was a little tender, and you can tell. Yeah. I don't know if you can see, but there's little
crease.
I had little blisters there, but I didn't actually notice any of that during the ride.
Okay.
I thought probably around a mile 100. I thought, I wonder if I should put those on. It's like, nah, I'm good. So I did not put those on.
Knowing that it had rained a few days before, did you bring a rain jacket with you?
I did. I brought the Gore
ShakeDry.
And I actually wore it on Thursday or Friday because it was raining and I wanted to go to the expo.
Okay.
So I put it on and wore it. It was fabulous. Yeah. But on race day, didn't need it, but I didn't have it with me. It was in that bag as well.
Important note, the Gore ShakeDry, if you see them on sale, grab them because they are not going to be available much longer. They're actually made from a not so eco-friendly chemical fabric, and so Gore is replacing them with something more eco-friendly, which I'm sure will be excellent too. But the ShakeDry has always been my favorite.
Very nice.
Yeah. So,
what else? Saddle was good.
that thing is awesome.
Yeah.
I love that saddle. I have that saddle on my road bike. That's the 3D printed, specialized. I forget the name. We'll put it
or something.
We'll put it down below. But yeah, this is an excellent saddle. Probably one of my favorites. The only saddle for me anyway that compares to this one is Ergon makes some excellent saddles, which is crazy to me because Ergon saddles tend to be very flat. This has some curve to it.
Yep.
Do you generally like the curved?
I don't mind.
Back?
When we did the fit, I got to sit on the specialized assometer, we used to call it. I measured a 118 at 120 sit bone width.
You blew a 118 on the assometer.
Blew a 118. But at 120, the recommendation is the wider saddle.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to change. I didn't mind making a few saddle placement changes that close, but I wasn't going to change saddles that close.
That's fair.
It did great. I didn't have any real discomfort during the event. Now, after standing around the finish line for an hour, waiting for people to finish and seeing everything, I had to get back on the bike to ride back out to the fairgrounds. That was not a happy moment.
Right.
So it turned out there was some friction that I didn't notice at all until I sat back on the bike.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a key piece of equipment in a moment, the AdventureWagon. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the people you ran into, the atmosphere. Right before we turned on the cameras, you were talking about how good it felt to be back in Emporia. I haven't been in a few years. I miss it. Talk a little bit about the atmosphere, the people. Coach Kristen was there at the very end to see you across the line, which is awesome. Talk a little bit about that. What was special about it?
It did. The whole town just embraces that so often, because I've put on small races before, nothing to that magnitude. The towns just don't want you there. You know, you want to be there because of the terrain or the roads or whatever. The town doesn't want you there to fight the whole time. This entire area of the country gets behind this event. All the businesses are welcoming the cyclist. It's just amazing. So in general, you feel like you're in your place at that. You're where you're supposed to be as a cyclist at that point. That's amazing. Everybody in the organization is super friendly and helpful. So that was really good. A lot of people helped us. You certainly gave tons and tons of help along the way with this. So I really appreciate you being that. My wife, Melissa, put up with an awful lot of all of this. She's been doing that for some 30 odd years now. So she's used to it, but she's still much appreciated. The coaching thing, I never had a cycling coach before. And it's funny, when we first started working together as coach and athlete, I asked Kristen, is it okay if I share some of this stuff, or is this your work? And she said, whatever, share what you want. The workouts are not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is us working together and finding the things. And she's just a master at listening to what I'm saying, filtering out the nonsense, workouts mysteriously getting harder based on data, guiding me down the path. And she likes to say, well, you did the work. And I say, yeah, maybe, but I wouldn't have done it. I certainly wouldn't have done it in that way without her. So that was just, I just wouldn't have had the day without her.
This is also a very marked shift from last year's Mark Still Unbound pursuits.
Yes. I'll just go pedal around. It'll work out.
Yeah. So this structure actually helped quite a lot.
Yeah, in fact, so much we had our call today, and I'd said I wanted to keep working through June so I can go to Foco Fondo. Sure. I'm going to keep going through the summer.
Great. There's an old phrase you might not know. It's called "I told you so," and I'd like to present that.
I don't recall anybody ever telling me that.
Oh, I told you this all the time.
Not hundreds of people.
Can you believe he can't remember me saying this over and over again? No. Weird.
Anyway, kudos, Coach Kristen. And the full disclosure thing too, let Specialized provide the bike and the clothes. I invested in that coaching. So I invested the same amount of money anybody would invest in that. I thought it was important to do it that way with coaching and that kind of experience. And the biggest thing is she has done that race so many times and countless other ones, but she knows those courses inside and out.
Yeah.
She could see what was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah.
It was just, as I got through the course, the one thing I did forget, because she would give me tips about the course, she said something about Kahala. And once you get to Kahala Road, something was going to happen. And I couldn't remember if it was you're home free and good to go, or there was pain coming. It was the latter.
Yes.
There is a monstrous climb up that road. And then again, you think you're done. You go, well, maybe she said that was it. Like, no, I remember now. She said there was one more. And it was, but anyway, worth it all. Now, she also does camps. She's part of the camps ahead of time. If you are worried about getting in, sign up for one of those camps, because not only do you get to go to Emporia ahead of time, ride the course with other like-minded crazy people and coaches like Kristen, but it includes entry into the race.
Nice.
So it's a guaranteed way in. And the investment I made plus the entry fee is about the same as the coaching anyway.
Nice.
And you get the additional coaching. So worth every dime.
Great. Any other notable run-ins with people? And
I'm gonna check my notes.
check your notes.
Oh, well, we mentioned Wheat Ridge. So Ridge Cyclery is just around the corner from here. Much appreciated for them getting me and working with me on the fit stuff, getting some of the gear I needed. So I didn't have all the tires and stuff I needed. They helped me order this. The Tracer Pros were actually kind of hard to get a hold of. So that was a great decision to run the Tracer Pros. They helped me get them. And then, of course, Steve Heel, the general manager there, and Jonathan Fay, the fitter, were both in Emporia. So I got to hang out with Steve. And I didn't see Jonathan. He was on a different XL path than I was. But I got to hang out with Steve a bit. So big thanks to them, too. That was an awful lot of help and letting me skip lines a little bit there in the store to get things done.
Nice. Great. Should we, unless you want to talk more people or more of the atmosphere in Emporia, I mean, anything else stand out?
The expo was nice.
The expo was nice. A well-run event. It's a lot of fun to be downtown in general. And
it is. It's a big event, too. It's just massive in its scale, but it's very efficient. It's impressive how they get through all that.
So let's talk about your accommodations, shall we?
Yes.
So you had booked a hotel room.
I did.
But you canceled that because I had been fortunate enough to test the AdventureWagon, which is a Ford Transit outfitted with a wonderful build from AdventureWagon. I had not even yet finished writing the article yet, which I'm glad I didn't, because now we can tag team it.
Add some new notes.
But fortunately, Mark was also able to take the AdventureWagon to Emporia. What was the experience with AdventureWagon and in the camping situation this year? I know last year there was a ton of rain.
Last year it rained a lot, and I slept in a tent, which was great. It worked out fine. I hadn't slept in a tent since I was 9 years old. It was fun. This year was far more comfortable. The AdventureWagon was awesome. I haven't driven a big vehicle since we moved out here. And you think about the wind going across Colorado and Kansas. On the way out, it's very windy, but it was pretty easy to drive. I didn't find it uncomfortable at all as far as the wind control. Got to the campgrounds, and it's the Lyon County Fairgrounds, and had my dry camping spot. I learned that's the term when you don't need the water or the electricity.
Correct.
And found me a spot. I did not choose a spot in the middle of everything just because there were fifth wheelers with generators going. But found a little spot close to where Brad and I had camped last year.
Okay.
And parked on a nice level piece of ground and opened the doors and
done.
It was easy. I was set up in 5 minutes. Put my sheets on the bed. I had the refrigerator in there. So I brought a loaf of sourdough and some banana bread and some steak and chicken that I'd grilled before.
Perfect.
Had a couple beers in there and a little bit of, surprise, but I had a little bit of whiskey. Not that bottle. That's the celebration bottle.
Yeah, it was a celebration bottle.
I hadn't earned it yet. It was awesome. And I talked to lots of fun folks. There was a lot of, of course, I'd never noticed an AdventureWagon logo before because I'm not a longtime van person. But they were everywhere. And so a lot of people were coming over to see some of the features in this build that they didn't have that they wanted, like the tray.
The slide out tray.
And the bed setup, the bunk, because they hadn't seen that before. So they got to see it. One of them was helping a friend build one out and had a tape measure and spent 45 minutes inside the van measuring things, checking out space because his friend, she'd bought the same van.
Oh, wow.
And was working on the build with the AdventureWagon. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Super comfortable. The little fan at the top kept air moving. It was never hot in there. It was awesome.
Great. So I do have some articles coming up on that, and you can find those on mensjournal.com/pursuits/van-life.
Remember all that or look down in the description.
We'll look right down there. So we'll have some photos and some great information about that particular build and AdventureWagon in general.
Yeah, it was cool. The ride back was even windier,
Yeah.
but it still worked. And I got tired. I was very drowsy. I only slept a few hours before. So I just thought, well, I'm at a rest stop. I'll take a nap.
Yeah. Got a bed right there.
Took a nap, felt better, drove home.
Great. Excellent.
Excellent.
Well, Mark, I am super proud of you for finishing this. This was incredible. Please don't hurt your neck carrying around this massive medal. It's very
I had
heavy.
to stop the van on the way home, find the medal, and put it in some clothes.
Yeah.
Because it
Clanks around. Well, congratulations. That's a phenomenal feat. I'm glad the process went well. What's next?
Well, first, I'm amazed that with basically 10 weeks of training with Kristen that we pulled this off.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for all the people that watched Rebuild Mark along this year and the so many that came up to me during the expo and came out to the fairgrounds and got a hat or a t-shirt and hung out and told me their story. That's been awesome. Next is Foco Fondo.
Sweet.
It was a great, fun ride last year. I think I might try the quadruple dog dairy route, the 818-mile route with the big climb up to the Alpine area around Fort Collins.
All right.
That's what's next. And then I miss road bikes.
Yeah.
One of the things I've come to learn about me is not coming from a mountain bike background, coming from a road background. I miss a double chain set. I miss close ratio cassettes. And I miss doing some big road rides.
Yeah.
And something I haven't done since I lived here. So I've got a few ideas for bikes I want to try. But I don't want to lose the fitness I got.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, I'm going to keep working with Coach Kristen through the summer at least.
Great.
And hopefully get back. I don't feel completely rebuilt. But as I mentioned in a little Instagram thing, I do feel reborn as a cyclist.
Yeah.
When you complete something that big, it's been a while since I pulled off something like that.
Yeah.
Feels really good.
Yeah,
I really appreciate everybody playing along.
Yeah, I'm stoked for you, and you look like a different person. You sound like a different person. It is incredible to see the change, and I'm glad you're going to keep up with it.
I am, and it was fun to have my mom get to watch too. She watched all the videos and gave me lots of nice, encouraging comments. Thank you, Mama.
High flow. Well, Mark, congratulations, and for all of you watching, please be sure to check out all the other videos if you hadn't been keeping up and learning along the way with Mark. There's a lot of invaluable information in those videos about not only preparing for a race, but simply just getting back on the bike, getting back in shape, reframing your mind to get into those hard, dark places that sometimes you have to go to be to achieve your goals. And I think it's worth a watch, even if you haven't been following all the way along.
I agree.
Yeah. How about that?
100%.
We are in agreement.
We're in agreement. All right. So until Foco Fondo, and certainly next year, if you haven't started pedaling yet, for next year, start pedaling. I'll see you in Emporia.